There's a certain sound that lives within all of us. Listen to it. It won't lie to you. Replicate that sound through music and you'll be heard. Guys, you've downloaded the mixing board. Time to get started. Welcome, guys. Thanks for downloading the mixing board. Real special episode today. But before I get started, I gotta give you the groundwork on this thing, okay? Check it out. You guys know I'm talking to Peter Erskine today, right? All right. So when we cut to the conversation, it's just going to cut to Peter explaining about Puck Productions. Okay, let me explain. So here I am. I get to Peter's studio, and right in front of the main door to the studio, it says Puck Productions. So I'm in there. I'm setting up all the microphones, all the equipment to record this podcast, and I start talking to Peter, and we just start talking, man. We just start rapping, and I ask him. I say, "Hey, what's Puck Productions? What's up with that?" And I hit record, and the second I hit record, Peter's off and running, and we just continue talking. An hour and a half later, I looked down and I said, shit. Well, I can't give him a proper introduction now because we just ended the show. But what I can do is give him a proper introduction. The introduction I wanted to originally give him now. So, ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, my pleasure to introduce to you Mr. Peter Erskine.
Nothing to do with hockey, but everything to do with Shakespeare's Midsummer Night's Dream. That's the first piece of music I worked on when I started building the studio. I was scoring a theatrical production up in Central California, and that's when I enjoyed my first visit to Jocko's Steak Restaurant, spelled Jocko apostrophe S. I haven't spent that much time in Central California, but the Midsummer Night's Dream was very memorable. And anyway, it's really what started me writing. It was actually a production before that, when I was still living in New York. Richard II, my best friend from high school, we hadn't seen each other in a while, and he visited me in New York, and he said, "I wonder if you'd be interested." Possibly, he's kind of beating around the bush, right, in scoring a production of Shakespeare's Richard II. And I said, yes.
Without a doubt, right?
Yeah. Because at the time I was beginning to research just casually, but as a fan, and listen to more and more film scores, classic film scores from like the 30s and the 40s in particular. European-born composers like Max Steiner and Erich Wolfgang Korngold. And in fact, since this is a conversation about drumming, the most entertaining, engaging, congenial conversation I ever had with Tony Williams, or just about with anybody, but it was with Tony, was the last time I saw him. And what's funny is before that time, and we had met pretty shortly after I joined Weather Report, and he was very nice. In the following years, whenever I'd see him, of course, it would seem natural to talk about, wow, Tony, you sound so great. And right. And I would notice that his eyes just kind of glazed, and it's like a window shade was just kind of getting pulled down, and there wasn't much to talk about. And I would always excuse myself and get out of his face. Without really thinking about that, but wanting to talk to him about what he had been speaking about quite openly, and it was a Modern Drummer interview where he was very excitedly talking about studying composition and orchestration, and speaking so openly about being a student. And I found it remarkably open and energizing. that he, of all people, would do this. And so when I spoke to him after a wonderful set that his band had played at the Catalina Bar and Grill in Hollywood, I said, Tony, I think it's really great what you're doing, the writing, and oh yeah, and you're talking about this thing, and oh yeah, and pretty soon, we're talking about Max Steiner's film scores and stuff, and he was so animated.
Wow.
And this, went on for a good 10 minutes, at least 10, 15 minutes. And then I said, and of course, by the way, you sound wonderful. Okay. The window shade started going back down. I said, nice, nice seeing you. And, I'll get out of your face. So I always was kind of fascinated and curious about that, but his real passion was, well, of course, was making music. But the fact that he was making music with a pencil and paper, I think, was of great interest. And I think it was a thrill for him, and it is thrilling. And it's a lot of work when you're not used to sitting in front of a piece of score paper.
Sure.
I still don't know how great and prolific writers do it. It astonishes me that they can just put it down on paper. And relating it to drumming, a musician who can visualize and hear and see the music in his or her head and get it down on paper, that means that they're creating music with a lot of specificity, a lot of intent.
Sure.
They know what it is that they want to hear. Mm-hmm. Big lesson in that for drummers. So often I encounter drummers who are playing out of habit. They play the stuff that they're just used to playing, and they use the same kind of transitional or connecting devices. And the left hand just starts paddling along, and then instead of really choosing the notes. And when you put it down on paper, you have to choose the notes.
Sure. Yeah. Exactly.
You can't just write without thought. And it's not an over intellectualized process. It's just doing something with intention. That's the main thing I teach.
One thing that's always caught my attention with your playing is not just the playing itself, but it's how you play, how you perform. You always have a smile on your face. It's very infectious. You're never thinking about what to do next. What do you attribute that to?
Well, thank you, but I'm just playing. I'm in a play box there, But I've got the world's greatest Lego. I'm just taking advantage of it. I'm just, wow, this is, and by Lego set, I don't mean just the drums themselves. Mm-hmm. That's kind of the play box, but it's real time architecture. So I'm like, wow, okay. Well, I put this here, and then I'll connect it to that over there, and so it's just it's just very interesting.
And how is it that you always keep the interest alive?
Generally, I think in part because I get to do a variety of things. I can maintain that same level of interest, whether I'm doing a film score or playing in a big band. Tomorrow I'm working with Pat Williams' big band at Capitol. We're doing a Christmas album. Christmas albums are always done in July. Or my own album, or what you might call art music, whatever that is. It's all art music. It's all fun, and if I'm reading, that's fun. It's just because I like the challenge. I like doing crossword puzzles. I'm not good at crossword puzzles. I'm better at drumming, I think, but they're fun. It's just it's good mental exercise.
Have you ever found yourself taken out of the quote unquote fun zone? What do you do? Are you conscious of it? How do you get yourself back into the swing of things?
If I'm conscious of it, and if I can catch myself, I'll just start taking deeper breaths. And if musically things aren't working, I will consciously try to simplify what I'm playing. I may consciously choose to play softer. It's kind of the Clint Eastwood approach. When Clint starts speaking real soft, everyone really starts listening.
Something's going on. Yeah. I'm going to use that tip from now on.
Clint's about to get serious. And yeah, it's a very stylized, filmic kind of thing. But it's interesting because he doesn't telegraph it by shouting. Right. It's always that look, and
and Peter just gave me that look right now. By the way, guys,
and it's always fun because wow, So there's a lot of power in the anti or the kind of the negative expression. That's why space and rest are so useful and functional. It's easy to fill up all the space. I mean, for me, it's not easy. It's more work, and I don't like it. If I'm playing something that I don't really feel at home in, and if I'm feeling too crowded, let's say it's a new musical situation, and I may stop and just, if it's not a performance, it's a rehearsal or recording, and just let's everybody just calm down a little bit. And what is it we're trying to do? I remember several times being on recording sessions where we'd play this tune and, we go in to the control room to listen to the playback and everyone's high-fiving and woo,
Yeah.
And then they'll look at me and I'll go, it was... Yeah, that was impressive. I'm just curious, why would anybody want to listen to that more than once? And, so now all of a sudden you're the big downer, kind of the groove killer. But usually the response will be, oh, yeah.
Now that we think of it, let's revisit that idea.
Yeah. So each tune, is some form of a story. So a story has a beginning, middle, and an end. It has some kind of arc or shape.
Right.
The trick when you're making an album is kind of keeping track or keeping tabs of that overall shape. Practical example. I was listening to an album that a vocalist had posted online because I wanted to recommend her for a project. So I go to the first track, and everything was kind of Norah Jonesy in the style of Norah Jones, whose singing I like, and she's so cute.
Indeed,
unbelievable. Anyway, so this was not Norah Jones, but the singer's kind of going for that vibe. So the first tune, do 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 boom. Boom, it started. Okay, that's like the next tune. Do do boom boom.
Oh no!
And the drummer, it's like 3 tunes in a row. So I said, "Hey, pal, what are you thinking of?" I mean, you never know what take might be used, but I keep track of what I play. I'm not going to repeat this stuff all over the place, especially the fill-in to start a tune. And so if someone's making that choice on purpose, I don't think it's a great choice. If they're just playing it out of habit because they're not thinking, then it's thoughtless. And thoughtless in 2 senses, Reiner. It's thoughtless in that they haven't given it much thought.
Right.
And it's also thoughtless in that it's kind of rude.
Right.
To me as the listener, I'm like, I don't want to hear that damn thing at the start of every song. It's okay once, maybe.
But not every single song.
No, I mean, I heard 3 in a row, and then I said, well, the singer's great, but wow, that drum performance was kind of a turn off.
Okay, so with that being said, your career has spanned well over 40 years. You've seen the changes in music from the 70s to the 80s to the 90s, so on and so forth. You've also been witness to the birth of the internet and other technologies and how they've shaped and changed the entire landscape of how we listen to music, buy music, and all the downloading and streaming that's been happening. So a lot of people would say that right now is the best time to be alive. You gave me that look. I know. I know.
Generally I'm an optimist. I agree. But I mean, right now is one of the really stranger times to be alive. And I think that my generation back, you know, and going to the baby boomers, we've really made a mess of things. I mean, we should just collectively be very ashamed of.
You think so?
I think so. Listen, science, as long as it's not impeded by conservative mindsets that want to shut down thought and imagination and accept the beautiful reality of universal truths. You know, science is truth. Math is truth. It doesn't lie, right?
Exactly.
And music is truth. People that want to cut the arts out of this aspect of society or that aspect of society. The democratization of communication, as per like the internet, is wonderful. And I'm with you. I love it. But the downside, of course, is that there's just so much negative bullshit being broadcast. And it's not for me to say, you know, this is right and that's wrong. But, you know, with the series of monumentally bad choices that have been made, you know, I'm a liberal and proud of it, and I don't like what's happened in the country because of right-wing obstructionism and absolutism, and the demagoguery that we're, you know, witnessing, and just the complete utter amount of bullshit of people that don't want to just make things better and everything getting fucked up as a result. Yeah. It's getting to me. It's depressing me.
What do you think of drummers today?
I think drummers today can play better and more drums than drummers ever could. It's amazing what I hear taking place at the Kit. I say it with a bit of sadness and not with smugness that I'm sorry that today's drummers, the younger ones, never had a chance to sit in front of Max Roach's drum set or Art Blakey's kit, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, as close as you can get, if you can catch Roy Haynes, you know, I would recommend to everyone listening to this to go out at any and every opportunity and sit in front of Billy Hart's drum set and take it all in. And the next guy that I'd put on the list would be Joe LaBarbera. And just witness how these gentlemen move the beat along and the sound they get from the instrument. And, you know, Billy and Joe aren't the quote-unquote biggest names in drumming. But for me, they really represent, you know, there's a direct link to the drumming I remember hearing when I was younger. And that doesn't take away from anything I'm hearing. I mean, a lot of drumming is busier than my personal taste kind of goes for. Yeah. But that's always been the case. There's always been drummers who played more densely and other ones that somehow, even if there were a lot of notes, the clarity and somehow the emotional content, or I might even say emotional clarity to be redundant, like Elvin's playing. I mean, it was unmistakable. I mean, the message was so clear when he played. Don't know if I always get a clear message from a lot of drummers I hear. It's great shit. I mean, it's like, wow, that's really amazing shit. But there's that larger picture thing, that arc that we mentioned earlier. And when I hear a drummer like Billy Hart or Joe LaBarbera, to name those two again, I see it. I mean, it's just rainbows everywhere when they play.
Wow.
So there.
Take that. Do you think it's because a lot of drummers today haven't found that musical maturity within them yet? Meaning a lot of drummers are still just playing drums, playing faster, louder, wanting to be the fastest out there, and not really realizing that there is a form of musical maturity that needs to be found. Because I could tell you for myself, growing up, I was trying to always play every fill, every, bass drum lick that I could find and try to squeeze it into every song because I just thought it sounded great. But it wasn't until after I matured as a musician that I had to really realize and sit down and think to myself, okay, what I'm playing, does it make sense for the overall song? I'm a contributor to this art that I'm creating, which is music, which is a song, which is, going to evoke emotion. Does it really go hand in hand? So do you think musical maturity is what's missing from today's drummer?
That's a big part of it. The challenge that we all face is that we are aspiring to reach a bar that was set by drummers who lived and worked in the environment where they were playing 6-7 nights a week for 5-6 hours a night. And let's say you were Louis Hayes playing in Cannonball Adderley's band. Right. You were playing opposite Art Blakey at Birdland, or maybe opposite Tony in Miles' band. I mean, you were at the top of your game. You had to be. And to the younger drummer who, unless they really make an effort to play as much as possible in a school setting, it's hard, But of course, these drummers in the 50s, 60s, develop the vocabulary,
right?
And there's enough documentation on demand, not just from vinyl albums like the way we used to get it, but with YouTube and all this stuff. So if a drummer makes the effort, he or she can get that information, but to get that experience is hard, and there aren't as many touring bands as there used to be, and there aren't as many hard-ass mentors. I mean, that was the style of passing it along.
Sure.
Generally, my students, I like to think of myself as being a pretty nice guy, but the reputation I have as a teacher at the university is a little contrary to that. I get feedback, and the kids think I'm pretty tough. Well, I am, because I'm trying to place not only get that fire under their drum seat a little bit, but to give them a sense of that responsibility that as much fun as I have playing around, you don't fuck around when you're making music. It's very serious. Yeah. And yet, at the same time, I'm completely willing. If I make a mistake, mistakes happen.
Sure.
I'm not gonna jump off a bridge or out of a 70th floor window because I fucked up a gig or something.
Right.
And if fucking up gigs was against the law, I'd be in Sing Sing right now.
Right.
And to that end, I mean, I welcome those embarrassing moments. That's how you learn.
Speaking of learning, there's a book, Effortless Mastery, written by Kenny Werner. I know that you've worked with him. What has some of your encounters been and experiences been with Kenny?
Kenny Werner is one of the greater minds and greater musical spirits I've ever encountered. And to play with him is to witness effortless mastery. His book is a must-read. And ultimately, I think it's, well, there are a number of things, and he says it much more eloquently and poetically than I could. But it's surrendering your ego, ultimately, and not worrying about, not having that there'd be some sort of ego consequence. If I mentioned this in my book, No Beethoven. It's a fun story. My son came home from high school one day, quite a few years ago, and Dad, can we have a talk? Sure. I said, do you want to go in the studio? Yeah. So we came. We're sitting right here where you and I are sitting. So I thought, well, maybe it's time for that conversation. I thought we'd already had it, but okay. I said, what's up? And he's having trouble. I said, come on, you're safe. And he said, well, my friend Matt came up to me today and said, hey, no offense, dude, but Jeff Tain Watts is a better drummer than your old man. And I was like, yeah. And he was like, Dad, no. And I said, Jeff's great. I mean, Jeff can do all sorts of things I can't do. And my son goes, you're more subtle, right? And I laughed. I said, maybe that depends who you ask. I said, don't worry, son. Your dad's doing okay. I pat him on the back. So it seemed like a cute story. Just 2 weeks later, I'm in Copenhagen at the airport, and we're changing planes. And this one trip out of all the trips, we happened to, for some reason, we were flying in business. So we got to use the SAS Business Lounge.
Oh, nice.
And then there's Branford's Quartet with Joey Calderazzo. And I see Jeff. Hey, man. And so we give each other the big bro hug and all this stuff. Because now, years before, at the jazz festival where I fell in love with my wife, in 1985 at the Madarao Jazz Festival, there was a drum battle. And we thought it was funny. And driving from the hotel, it was at this ski resort, we're driving down to the stage at the bottom of the mountain. I think it was Branford who started doing a Howard Cosell bit, the drum battle as a sporting event. Yeah. And it's very funny. We're laughing the whole time. Anyway, so it's Jeff, myself, Ralph Peterson Jr., and Randy Jones, who just passed away, who had played with Brubeck for many. And I think he was there playing with Brubeck. And I first met Randy when he was playing with Maynard Ferguson's band back in 1973, I think. Anyway, I had suggested that we do a song that appears on the Gretsch Night at Birdland Volume 1 album. And it's a J.J. Johnson tune called We Dot. We dot and Art Blakey recorded it on his Live at Birdland album. So it's a cool tune. It's a blues, all sorts of trades and stuff. And we do it. We have fun. Audience loved the set. We're all taking our bow. Jeff comes over, gives me a hug, and then gets in my ear, and he goes, I won.
No kidding.
And he just says, get the fuck out of here. And I said, no, man. You got it. And I gave him a hug. Now, I've almost never given it up to a fellow drummer. I mean, I'm always honest, and I appreciate it. And my elders I respect, and but generally I was like, okay, that, listening to someone else play, you always think like, well, that's okay, but I like my shit more, kind of. So, we say our goodbyes, 'cause I think we were on our way out. So now I have to get to the gate. And I noticed that I'm lighter walking to the gate than I felt in a long time.
Mm.
And I was fascinated by this. I felt freer because I'd surrendered this anxiety about, where I fit in the universe of drumming or something. So a week later, we're in Munich and we're doing a sound check. And the club or the venue was in the basement of this hotel, real nice hotel. And we're going to play that night. And there's a large area for the audience, but there's a smaller area right to the left of the bandstand where they have some tables. Mm. And I look over there and there's Jeff and Joey Calderazzo. And now, so you're playing, you're doing your sound check, and you've got Jeff Tain Watts 10 feet just to your left. I was smoking a cigarette, and I look completely idiotic when I smoke a cigarette because I don't know how to smoke a cigarette. And we're sound checking longer than I expected, so I've got this cigarette in my mouth with a mash. So all of a sudden, Jeff comes over while I'm playing, very gently puts an ashtray right under the cigarette, and he just lightly taps it and kind of smiles. And then we stopped, and hey, check it. Yeah, I want to check out that ride symbol. Now I'm feeling, number one, very kind of honored and blessed that this guy's down here. He could be taking a nap. He could be going for a walk. He could be having a beer. Beautiful summer day in Munich. Any number of things he could do. Yet he chose to be here. Was that to vibe me out? No. He was being respectful. And it was a great energy.
Right.
One of the other musicians in the band became very self-conscious by the presence of the other Branford bandmate. Mm-hmm. And nothing was right. The monitor was to this, to that. The lights were, And, that night, Branford's in the audience, Chick Corea, a bunch of people.
Yeah.
And I'm having fun. And the other musician wasn't. Because of that thing. And what I realized was, what I try to tell my students, number one, when you're playing, Steve Gadd and Vinny and Brian Blade and Mark Giuliano all come in while you're playing. And then all of a sudden you wish, geez, I wish they'd come to the first set. It seemed like that was a lot better. You get self-conscious.
Sure.
Who wouldn't?
Of course.
You want to be liked. And yet, if they're paying attention, cool. If they're checking their email, fine. I have no control over that. Mm-hmm. If they like it, great. If they don't like it, it doesn't change what I'm playing.
Right.
So I realized there's no correlation, and I can't second guess for someone that just happened to walk into the room all of a sudden and try to, I have to play what the music asks me to play. And if they like it, great. And if they don't, cool. And so when you realize that if you learn to trust yourself and you learn to trust the music, because again, music being truth most of the time. Yeah. And if you can learn to trust the musicians you're playing with, and that's why good bands are such a great thing.
Sure.
Then it's all good.
Do you think as musicians and the changes we've faced as musicians in the industry, would you say that the industry is in troubled times?
Well, it's a very challenging time. Again, we had the democratization of recording technology. In the old days, you had to be invited into the studio. It was a brother and sisterhood of limited access.
Sure.
Now everyone has a studio in their garage or second bedroom. And that's kind of great, but the ritual, if you will, of the whole ritual of recording, even the lights when and the red light goes on, and there's a thing to that. It's just like when you set foot in Carnegie Hall. So Columbia 30th Street Studios, or the Warner Brothers sound stage or the MGM stage, now called Sony, or tomorrow when I walk into Capitol, I mean, everybody feels it when they walk into Capitol. You just know, like, there's a lot of music that's been made in this room, and music that has meant a lot to a lot of people.
What a great feeling that must be.
It's wonderful.
God.
So, I try, like, my colleagues, we all try to honor that. We don't take it for granted. Somehow people are still paying us to come in and record, but it's far fewer sessions than back in the day.
Right.
I mean, for freelance studio musicians, I mean, if they wanted to, they'd be recording 3-4 sessions a day. Now, if you get 3-4 a week, you're doing really good. So, technology has collided with economics, and so a lot of stuff is done either using library music or all within the realm of the computer. And I'm guilty for enabling some of that with the sample libraries I've participated in. But that's technology, and it marches forward. The downloading thing and the streaming, and the fact that fewer and fewer people are buying CDs. I have my little CD label. And, CD number 22 is coming out next month. The Bob Mentzer Big Band, and I have 2 more in the pipeline. But I think that's going to be it, because it's just very expensive to bring musicians into a studio and to have an album mixed and then mastered and have somebody design it and then making the CDs and then paying a publicist, $5,000 to publicize the thing. And everyone does their best. Just the audience is just not what it was. I mean, back in the day when CDs first came out, I mean, it was kind of like VHS tapes.
Oh, yeah.
You would just buy. I remember pre-recorded VHS tapes came out. You could spend $80 to $90 for one movie. Just like, wow, they've got The Adventures of Robin Hood. I got to get it. Amazing. I can watch it whenever I want. And so this is a new reality, and I don't think too many of us have figured out. I know I haven't, how to do it profitably. So I do the best I can. But luckily I work in enough other areas of music that I can continue to make my own recordings. But so the CD may be going the way of the cassette. Who would have thought? So I don't know. I mean, I woke up a few days ago and I said, okay, this morning I'm going to have a cup of coffee and I'm going to try to solve all the problems of the world. And
How far did you get?
I didn't get anywhere. I couldn't think of a damn thing. That's why I got depressed. So I've been depressed the last few days.
If it wasn't so late, I'd try to sit here and help you, but I don't think we'd get really far.
There are no easy answers. There are no easy solutions. And so I've always embraced technology. I've always liked it. And music will always be there. And I think the hunger and thirst for music will always be there. But we may have to figure out a new sense of discipline or just whatever that new paradigm might be. That I mean, the streaming thing is of great concern.
It is
for musicians as well as for songwriters.
Yeah.
I'll be the devil's advocate. Maybe this is nature somehow trying to right itself. It never seemed quite understandable to me that if you were a songwriter, for example, and someone wrote a great tune, side A of a 45 single, and you wrote a really shitty tune, but it happened to be put on side B because it was such a shitty tune. that writer would make as much money as the writer. Well, they wouldn't get the radio play. But I always thought that's kind of odd. It doesn't make sense. Or if someone wrote a tune and you used that tune, even though the chord changes may have been similar to other chord changes, right, and you happen to make a 14-minute improvisation out of that, you have to pay that much more for the right of the song than if you'd only played on it for 3-4 minutes. And that always seemed like, it doesn't quite, it doesn't
match up.
I mean, the person that should be making the money is the person that played that improvisation.
Yeah, sure.
So from that point of view, maybe this is a big shaking out of all that, and something new and better will come along. I don't know what. I mean, the studios. Let's think about it. I mean, they were scared to death of videotape.
Sure.
And then streaming and all this stuff, and yet somehow a lot of people have managed to turn it into an enviable business model, and more people get pleasure from it. So, can we do that with music?
Do you think it's the industry's way of monitoring and limiting how much a musician or an artist gets paid? I mean, do you think we're perhaps in the future sometime, do you think we're headed towards the way of how painters and other artists have been making a living or showcasing their art? Are we going to get to a point where music is just going to be a part of an exhibit and we walk in, we pay our fee, and we listen and we watch? I mean, it just seems to be changing so much.
I mean, I always felt it was a fair bargain. If I paid $7.49 for an album, that's what they used to cost, and I could spend as much time as I wanted listening to that. If I pay $10 to get, or $15 to get into a museum, it costs money to curate and preserve the art, and et cetera. So I don't expect to get into a museum for free, and I don't want to look at my art on a computer screen. So if people want to be in the presence of a great piece of art and see the texture of the paint, that's the same impulse that makes us want to go to concerts. Home entertainment is growing by leaps and bounds. I was just at one of the major studios in their innovation lab. And it's mind-boggling and almost frightening where it's going with virtual reality stuff.
Oh, yeah.
And then I'm just the thought of like, oh my goodness, it's like everyone's just going to be sitting in these virtual reality chairs with their headgear on. Yeah. And then people won't even talk to each other anymore. They just get, which is almost happening.
They don't with texting.
Yeah,
I mean,
with texting. I'm just old enough that, I mean, I'm a little bit of an email hound when I need to be, but texting never quite, unless it's with my kids,
Sure.
I'm not into texting. So as far as recorded music goes, okay, for example, I subscribe to Spotify, but I use it pretty much just at school. Because my CD collection is here in my home studio, and I haven't gotten everything put into my server.
And I'm looking right behind me, and you have a lot of CDs. Your entire wall's filled with CDs and albums. And
that's not even half of them. I gave that many to Amoeba.
Really?
Yeah, and albums, and we got a music room in the house. It's got but you will notice they're alphabetized. That's my obsessive compulsivity.
That's impressive. That's really impressive. I got to tell you.
I had help. Except for that ability to have that handy reference to, so I could play somebody hey, check out this Art Blakey recording, and YouTube is fun. You know, I can,
Yeah.
if I want to, I was showing my students some video clips of the late Vinny Ruggiero, who was a great drummer, and there's a clip of him playing with Slide Hampton's band in Paris. I think it's 1962, and he plays this terrific solo. And I said, just look at the way he's playing. Look at his body attitude, angle, the shoulders, all that. And then I show him a clip of just a few years, about 8 years later, of Steve Gadd playing with the Army Field Band. And that's where I first saw Steve. I was in high school. He was playing with the Army Field Band. Blew my mind. He started playing the drum intro to Sissy Strut, me and 2 other students. The only reaction that we could think of, and it was spontaneous, the 3 of us stood up and we started screaming because it was so good. We didn't know what else to do. I just had never seen anything quite like it. The kinetic energy was but when I compare these 2 video clips, they go, holy cow. Yeah. Because I mean, Vinny was a huge influence on Steve, and you can see it, you know. And so it's very useful when you are focusing on one drummer and say, well, where did that drummer get some of their thing? And now with YouTube, it's pretty easy to find. And so I like all that for that. But I buy my music. I like, but because I'm a content provider, so it would be hypocritical if I didn't. And I buy my software. I like to buy my software.
You mean you don't like to go down and download it illegally and everything?
No,
I'm kidding. No.
I mean, I don't because you can mess up your computer, but
sure.
Then you don't enjoy the rights of ownership. And I like the support, and even if, like with some of the this subscription based thing now, which I'm not particularly a fan of, or Adobe, or you have to keep upgrading. But okay, so that's just fact of life. I mean, what this stuff can do, I mean, it's astonishing beyond belief what Pro Tools can do, what Sibelius can do, what Adobe, what any of the software and what a lot of app guys are doing. So yes, I love all the technology. But if people want their big produced albums, it's going to reach a point where the funding for that is going to be harder and harder to come by, I think. I'm still amazed that I get called in to work on big projects. But like I said, it's fewer and farther between.
You've always embraced technology, whether it being through sample libraries that you've been a part of, or most currently, smartphone applications you've created for the musicians. What's your take on products such as virtual instruments, in particular drum libraries, such as FXpansion's BFD, which I'm a big fan of, I use, and also think that the sample pack that you did for them was phenomenal. But what's your take on them?
I have no problem with it. The old sample head library that I did with Will Lee years ago had some terrific stuff, particularly the brush loops, because it didn't exist. And yeah, it impacted the number of times I was called for certain things, and that would have impacted other drummers too, perhaps. But generally, most composers who use it as a step, and they'll finish the recording by asking me to come in because they themselves hear the loop, or they just I just want to get the real thing. I've got mixed feelings about it, but again, I think it's everything else has been sampled, so drums are going to be sampled too. A lot of films are being scored with orchestras further and further east in Europe. Economics have always been part of the picture. So these are challenging times. You know, the musicians union is having to wrestle with these new realities. And there's no consensus in our community here in Los Angeles. There's a lot of divide going on about it. And you know, I've enjoyed both sides of that. I mean,
Right.
Like most every jazz musician, we do a lot of stuff that's not on the books. You know, when you play a gig somewhere, you get $50. That's just what it is. You know?
Yeah.
And yet, when I work on a film, by the way, The Secret Life of Pets is opening this week. It's got drums all over it, and that's all me.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, it's a fun
Secret
score.
Life of Pets.
Yeah, Secret Life of Pets. Alexandre Desplat, who won an Academy Award for the music he wrote for Grand Budapest Hotel. Yeah. It's a delightful score.
Beautiful.
Hang on just a second. Can you
Sure.
pause?
Sure, yeah.
Let's see if my...
All right, guys, so I had to press pause right about now because Peter was gracious enough to share with me some music from the Secret Life of Pets soundtrack, as well as share some music from The Adventures of Tintin, which he was performing on as well. It's very interesting because Peter's going to go on to describe some experiences he had with composer John Williams during that recording session. So I'm going to go ahead and go back to my talk with Peter, and let's see what he has to say.
So this is interesting, working on The Adventures of Tintin, or Tonton, I'm not sure how you pronounce it, with John Williams. And at one point early on, he cautioned the orchestra. He said, do not attempt to add any interpretive feeling or phrasing. Do not play anything other than what is specifically notated on the paper. In that way, we will achieve the maximum expression. If you try to do it on your own, what's not indicated, it won't work. So like, you know. And on one of the passes, I'm just doing 1, 2, just offbeats.
Yeah.
And I got to the end of an 8-bar phrase, and I did sort of, I did a slight crescendo, decrescendo. And then when I heard the playback, I was like, fuck.
Oh, wow.
I messed it up. He was right. You know, don't put your 2 cents in. Just play exactly what I wrote and just listen really carefully what's going on. And I'd never experienced that before. I was amazed by the effect of it. He's amazing. He's really remarkable, and composers like John Williams or Alexandre Desplat. It's a real pleasure. I'm working with Pat Williams tomorrow. I just love the way these people write. That was the first big film date I did in Los Angeles, was with Pat Williams, a film called Used Cars.
Cars.
Used Cars is hilarious.
But see, listening to these songs, there's so much emotion that's in there.
Yeah, it's real musicians.
I mean, but that's what's missing now.
I know. I tour with Seth MacFarlane. It's one of my great joys now.
Yes.
Playing with him, because he loves to highlight the writing of arrangers like Nelson Riddle. Right. And of course, the songs are all great.
All right, guys, so I had to press pause one more time. Now, Peter was going to go ahead and show me some music he had been working on with his bandmates. And in the duration of our conversation, this probably happened about 4 or 5 different times. And each time, we would listen to music, whether it being from, a different soundtrack he had been working on, or music he had created with his bandmates. But what was really special to me was just the simple fact that he sat there describing the emotions, illustrating to me what he felt, breaking down the drum parts. He really pulled me into those emotions. He really pulled me into the music. And we had a lot of fun. And as we go ahead and get back to the recording, you're probably going to hear the very last millisecond of a song that he and his bandmates were working on. And you're going to hear Peter talk about the recording being fun. He's going to talk about how much fun he had. And of course, we get back to the conversation of Seth MacFarlane. So with that being said, enough for me. Let's get back to Peter.
That's fun.
That sounds fun.
That's. I was talking about Seth.
Yes,
excuse me,
MacFarlane. Yeah.
So, what he likes to say during the concerts, he said, one of the things I love about this music is that, or doing these songs, is that it reminds us of a time when music was more than three Swedish guys dicking around on a laptop.
Oh God, I love him.
And yeah, and now here's a question I have for our listeners.
Mm-hmm.
I was watching. What was I watching? Was it the Academy Awards or was it the Grammys? It was something. Anyway, so one singer after another, it was some new thing, and then and it's always the same. Of course, you sound like an old person when you say it's the same chord changes, but it's the same four chords that have been used in all these tunes, which all sound like Pachelbel's Canon. But anyway, so the whatever, and then it repeats and it goes several times, but every song ends with do do. And then the awkward silence, and people, applaud.
Yeah.
And was it the Grammys? And then Lionel Richie, and then he sings a song. It's actually an arrangement, and it ends with boom, bop, bop. And I'm like, yes, thank you. I mean, and the whole place went nuts.
Yeah.
People like jumped out of their seats because Stevie Wonder. I mean. That's the thing I'm not digging.
Yeah.
It's this weird, like, it's just shitty storytelling.
Doesn't
Like,
go anywhere.
come on. Be brave. Create an ending. I mean, a lot of my colleagues, they hate fades just because occasionally I like a fade. I think fades could be fun, but, commit to something. And I just don't get it. The aesthetic of it, it's so boring.
Do you think it's because the newer artists aren't exposed to the music that was played by musicians, for musicians, that there was emotions involved in that music that you and I probably sat here talking when when we weren't recording? I mean, there has to be a point where I think the industry has to look and look into the future and say, man, our artists are, I don't want to say the term manufactured, but some way.
Auto-tune does that. I mean, again, the ritual of making an album, a lot of times these very talented singers were brought into a studio and then just plunked into the boiling water, and then could they survive?
Yeah.
But the ones with talent did. And the commitment to recording with an orchestra brings a life force to the music that doesn't when you are punching in for several weeks, and whether it's someone's second bedroom or someone who's made a ridiculously unfathomable amount of money, and they've got this studio of nightmarish proportions in their house, and a song that's supposedly composed by like 8, 9, 12 different people, and you'd be hard pressed to be able to sing one melody from it.
Right.
And if this correction in publishing about streaming is in some way a natural reaction to that bullshit. That's why I said I'm going to play the devil's advocate, because that whole process, even the whole Grammy, it's just become so warped, and it's gotten away from what great music is. And great music touches the soul, touches the heart. And it does require discipline. You know, not every asshole is supposed to be able to be a great musician. Everyone is invited, of course, not by musicians. I don't have that right, but by music itself to participate.
Sure.
But, you know, hey, you don't want me flying your airplane and you don't want me designing your skyscraper because I don't know what I'm doing with that shit.
Right.
But you do want me playing drums on your recording because I know how to do that. And I've spent enough time learning how to do it that I understand the counterbalances and why when this happens musically, I do that. Yeah. And people aren't aware, but it feels good.
Yeah.
You know, I had a trombone player say to me at Capitol Studios a few weeks ago, he said, "Peter, you're still my favorite drummer." I didn't know what he meant by that, but I said, "Oh yeah? Why?" I was in the restroom. He was washing his hands and I was standing against the wall. So I turned my head. "Oh yeah? Why?" He said, "Because you make it easy." And that's a way of being musical. And that's not a sign of genius. That's just a sign of having done something long enough that you learn how to do it. So, yes, when people get on the platform and start creating and you know, that's fine. Popular music, you sound like an old fart if you, well, it's only 3 chords. I mean, they used to say that about the Beatles, and the Beatles' music is timeless and it's ingenious and it's beautiful and it's great. A lot of music from then, just like from any time, wasn't that great. And, you know, time tends to filter out the good from the bad, let's say. And it's not that I'm anti any form of music. I'm not as well versed with a lot of contemporary stuff as I wish I was. I mean, I love rhythmically, like a lot of rap music, just the way the singers do it. It's brilliant. I think the back phrasing, it's really wild, and it's like, wow, I just never heard anybody do that with music. I think it's very cool. But yeah, the Hit Factory thing and where it's gotten the last few years and with these anonymous Swedish dudes writing this bullshit.
You mean I won't find any of their songs in your iTunes?
Well, I don't know what you'll find in my iTunes. Apple's made it so weird. I mean, I turned on my computer one day and I had a U2 album that I don't know how it got there. Even though Larry, what's his name? He was using my little Yamaha snare drum before I left Yamaha, and then they took it off the market. But I thought that was cool. I said, well, that's kind of cool.
How are you enjoying the new Thomas?
The Tama drums, I love the Tama drums. The Star Classic is a great drum set, and I'd be happy enough with that. But getting to play on Star, and that was my first real introduction. And I tend to favor the Babinga constructed Star drums. They sound so good. The clarity of the instrument, the body of it. It's not a dull or harsh or unpleasant sound if I play them with volume. It just brings out a richness of tone. And shell construction does have something to do with it. Sure. And the bearing edge has something to do with it. The mounting system, you'll notice that it's there's a triangulation thing going on. So it's not just pulling on the top hoop, but the distribution of the weight and the force of holding up the drum with that bottom bumper thing, I think makes a difference. The ecosystem of using their hardware, especially this new classic stand, that was the secret part of the deal. Yeah. Everyone thought something was up, and I get the cynicism, but Tama was the first company to promise to make a cymbal stand that was a replica of the Ludwig flat bass stand, but with mutually agreed upon improvements.
Wow!
And it doesn't rattle, and it's just such a joy to use. Meanwhile, the heavier duty Star hardware, I like it very much. I feel very at home with it. Pedals great. That was another.
I've always
sealed
loved
the deal.
Tama hardware.
Yeah, I didn't know. I mean, I always just thought Tama was kind of a rock and roll drum.
Yeah.
and it's just a great instrument. So yeah, I feel like a kid every time I get to play.
So, just to let the good people at home know, I am sitting in front of a beautiful Thomas Starr drum kit, 7-piece, I might add.
Which is 3 more drums than usual. I mean, I'm normally quite happy to play on a 4-piece.
Yeah.
And my new thing is funny. For a long time, I was just staying away from the 20-inch bass drum. That was my first kit. Was the first kit after I had this great Gretsch used drum set. The first new drum set my dad bought for me was a Ludwig 20, 12, 14. And I had a Dynasonic snare.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, that was my 4-piece kit. And I've gotten back, I love playing the 18 for bebop stuff, and I love playing the 22 for big band or recording stuff. Although the 20 is great for big band, but the 20 is great for small group, and it's great for the funky stuff. That was a 2-headed 20-inch bass drum you were listening to.
Was it really?
Funk recording, yeah.
Oh, wow.
With a felt strip, no hole.
No kidding.
And that's what's great about these drums. So I might add a 16-inch floor tom, but basically it was just a 4-piece kit. I can do anything, and I might finally be catching up to my good buddy Steve Gadd, who had this figured out years ago. Because I'm changing drum sizes and stuff. And he's just always played the same 22-inch bass drum and 10, 12, 14, 16 or 14, 15, 14, 16. And I thought, God, why didn't I just do it like Steve did? It's so simple, But now, the 20, 12, 14 is really doing it for me.
Nice.
And that's what you heard. It was just 2 toms. And that's all you need. But it is fun to have the other drums. I'm going to have the sister kit to that at Capitol Studios tomorrow.
Oh, are you really?
Yeah.
What color?
It's a maple. But it's just a dark stained maple, and it's beautiful.
Do you see any big changes coming up in the consumer drum market at all?
I'm not the right person to ask, because the stuff I'm always urging and pushing the drum companies to do is the stuff that it doesn't seem to sell as much. I mean, younger drummers still like getting the double braced hardware stands, cymbal stands, even though they weigh a ton. Every drummer I know is frothing at the mouth, waiting for these lightweight flat bass stands to become available everywhere, because they're just great. I don't have to worry about tripping over bulky cymbal legs sticking out all over the place. And the one cool thing about the old stands, and this is the only cymbal stand now on the market. If you check out every cymbal stand, it has a fixed nylon bottom disc. Which was seen as like an improvement. It was like, but I miss playing the cymbal.
Yeah.
When the cymbal moves, and the floating disc allows that.
Yeah.
And so I'm having way more fun. It's just more interesting. Sounds better.
Oh, I'm sure. But going back to what you were mentioning before, what were some of the recommendations you gave that the drum companies didn't listen to?
Well, I worked with Zildjian on developing a new splash.
Nice.
And they were saying, well, splashes, not too many people buy them. And I said, well, if you make a good enough one, they will. And I hope that'll be the case, because they honored my suggestion. They listened to me. They put a lot of time, effort, and money into developing this cymbal. The flat bass cymbal stand, that was the primary reason I left Yamaha, because I was getting laughed at drummer feedback meetings.
Wow.
I actually brought a Ludwig stand and I said, just make this, please. And shut up. And DW at least had a flat bass stand. I like the Tama one a lot more because of the smaller profile of the rubber feet. The hardware is all lighter on it, not nearly as bulky. The DW has the memory locks, and that's their system, and I admire that. But you don't need memory locks with a little cymbal stand. It's good. little higher, okay. It's, and generally I just close the legs and throw it in my hardware bag, and I don't have to adjust it. I don't know. Complicated tilting systems, just like the old ones.
Haven't been a big
just
fan of those.
teeth, and it works.
That's it.
And I was delighted that Tama, and they were the one company that said we'll do it.
Wow.
And so it's great. And it's not a signature product. I mean, they have my picture on a tag with the stand, but it's just because people will identify it with me, because I was just very proud that they went ahead and followed the advice. So if you need an extra cymbal stand, or you want to replace your hardware that's either wearing out or it's too heavy or whatever, the Tama Classic stand is amazing. I even recommended the font for the packaging.
Did you really?
Yes. And if you look carefully, you'll notice it's the Clarendon font, which was used by Sony back in the late 50s, early 60s.
Well, you really know your you are a tech guy, aren't you? Peter, thank you so much. It's truly an honor to have you be a part of the show. I'd love for you to wrap it up with any final thoughts and anything you want to share with the folks at home.
One of my favorite cartoons I ever saw, I believe it was in the New Yorker, Clouds of Heaven, and there's a man and wife, presumably, in their robes, and the ionic columns and the chiseled is the word heaven over the entrance. And the guy's looking up with his wife, and the caption reads, somehow I'd always imagined it'd be a different font. Hey, thanks for listening, folks.
All right, guys, that's going to do it for us for this episode of The Mixing Board. And Peter, if you're listening to this show right now, thank you, sir, for being a part of it. And thank you for sharing your experiences both personally and professionally with us. It was awesome. Thank you. And guys, I just want to let you know, Peter has a great vintage drum collection. I regret not taking a camera with me, because I definitely want to capture that for you guys and follow up with them on some of the stuff we were talking about earlier. So maybe I'm going to get in touch with Peter and set up another show later on in the year. But for right now, I do want to tell you guys something. You guys heard Peter. You hear what kind of tech head he is, man. He loves his technology. And I'm going to tell you right now, he knows his shit. Okay? You can't fool him. He knows technology probably better than you and I put together. So Peter has actually gone one step further. Peter's developed apps for the smartphone and tablet for us musicians to use. They're downloadable apps that they contain songs and charts and a mixing board. No pun intended. But what's very intuitive about these apps is the fact that you can, access all these instruments, and you can mute and solo the instruments, and you can play along to these songs. Jazz Essentials 1, Jazz Essentials 2, the Code of Funk, Afro-Cuban Essentials. He has it all. And the nice thing is you're performing with world-class musicians, all of Peter's friends, and Peter behind the drums. So if you're a drummer, you just mute the drum track and you play along. I know with, the Funk Code, that's what I do. Jazz Essentials 1, that's what I do. I listen to Peter, I study the music, and I say, okay, let me see what kind of, how creative I can get with this song. And it's a great practice tool, guys. If you haven't checked them out, okay, what you need to do is go to your app store, whether you're on an iPhone, an iPod Touch, or an iPad. It doesn't matter. As long as you're on an Apple device on the iOS platform. Keep in mind, these apps are specifically made for the iOS. Okay? So all you do, just go to your app store and type in Peter Erskine, and you'll get a list, about 4 or 5 different apps that you can download. It contains songs. Again, very interactive, very intuitive apps. You'll enjoy them. Believe me, I do. And they're a great resource for practice. So check those out. Something just as important, though, to practicing and, challenging yourself, I think, is your hearing. Because if you don't have your hearing, forget it. You don't have anything else, right? And as musicians, that's probably one of the biggest things we have. So next week's show, we have Brian Geller. Brian Geller is a part of the Ultimate Ears family. Ultimate Ears, the largest in-ear monitor manufacturers around. Okay, I use them. I've been using them for a long time, and they have saved my hearing, and they have made me a better performer. I'm going to give you guys a scoop all about it next week. You don't want to miss it. And we're talking atomic punks. If you don't know who the atomic punks are, you're going to realize who they are. So next week, Brian Geller, Ultimate Ears. Peter Erskine, thank you, sir. I'll see you guys next week.